It's always the risk takers that people remember. It's not the ones that live in the middle and never lean one way. You got to take some chances.
I had a buddy in high school. Man, he never took risks.
Yeah,
I forget his name.
I mean, you could live it. You could live. Cool. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
This is what we deal with all day, every day. This guy. Welcome to the What's the Point podcast with Point. All right. What's going on, y'all? I'm Nate Smith, Digital Creative Director at the Point Group, and you're here with the What's the Point podcast, the inaugural episode. Today, we're very excited to be sitting here with the amazing Executive Creative Director at Point, J Frederick. Cue the round of applause.
Yay.
Branding veteran with over 2 decades of experience in the marketing world, from working with big names like Verizon, Whole Foods, and Amazon, to building distinct brand voices for local businesses. Jay shares insights, stories, and a bit of humor from his journey in the creative industry. That's what we're going to get into today. And we're going to dive into what it takes to build brands that last, the evolution of branding over the years, and why the right mix of creativity and strategy still wins. Plus, and I'm telling him he's going to do this, Jay's going to open up a little bit about his branding fails, some of his guilty pleasure ads, and the weirdest pitch he's ever made to a client. And before we jump into it, Jay, I want to give a quick big up to my co-host and producer of the podcast, Raul Espinosa. Boom, right over there. My man, Raul. What's up, brother? We're going to just get right into it. All right, Jay, we're going to dive right in. And
branding fails, right?
Branding fails. I know you're contemplative. You're a contemplative.
Like 4 hours of this.
Right. That's what I would need. Yeah. So J, the letter in the alphabet, yes, is your first name.
It is.
And amazing stories you always could tell people, because everybody always asks you, is it J-A-Y or is it just J? You're like, just J. So how did you get just J?
So, no, he just, I think it was from old school. There's a lot of guys in the 30s, 40s, 50s that were named letters because they had so many kids, I guess. And like cattle branding, I think, maybe, because they would, you don't have a lot of room on a cow's ass, so you just like, hey, you get one thing, you heat it up, and there it is, a J. So it was J, and I have a brand that's J with an F on it. So
and for those of you that don't know, I've worked with Jay for almost 10 years now, and we've been around the block together a few times in this journey. And he's a West Texas boy.
That's right,
West Texas boy. And so a lot of what you're hearing and stories you'll hear are going to come from that sort of build, which makes him so uniquely awesome and still
uniquely awesome.
Because that's what we do. So let's get into it, man. We're gonna talk about a lot of stuff today, Jay. But I think one of the first things people want to know, obviously, you've had your award-winning writer, man. You've done a lot of brilliant stuff, a lot of brilliant campaigns, a lot of amazing radio stuff. We mentioned that you worked with outside of Amazon and Whole Foods and some of the other Albertsons and some of the other people you worked with, Mel Renfro.
Yeah,
it was an all-American douchebag, right? So like you did those faux NFL spots are really cool. We'll have to tell those stories later.
Yeah.
But what initially drew you into the creative side of the biz, man? Like, how did you get into it?
So it's crazy. I in college I went to military academy because Top Gun really derailed my life for a few years, and I thought I wanted to be a pilot, and found out that wasn't going to be the case because I couldn't see shit. And so like they said, basically you should try something else. And then I ended up transferring, and then I transferred majors like underwear. Went through them all: architecture, English, math. You can believe that. Engineering, lots of different stuff. Nothing. Computer science was interesting too. Not my bag. Cool, love it, but really didn't find my way until I took an elective class at Tech, and it was Intro to Advertising, and they showed a video. Dr. Jaw, JJ Jaw, 2 J's.
JJ Jaw was his name.
JJ Jaw.
Wow.
He still not as cool as just one
showed
J.
a video class, and it was what was it called? Selling the Dream was the name of the short piece documentary. It was Saatchi & Saatchi's launch of the Mitsubishi 3000. And it was all the way from concept to execution. And the idea was basically these horses coming around a racetrack, and then it was cut to a Mitsubishi 3000 red car coming around the final turn of a horse racetrack. I was talking about all the horsepower that this thing had. and they went through concept to client presentations to the production to the final product, and I was like sold. I think I made a beeline. I don't know if I waited till the class was over. I went to my advisor and I said, I want to change my major, and I changed that day to advertising. Met my wife there. She was in advertising, and that's where it started.
That's amazing.
Nice.
I feel like there's no linear path into the creative biz, man. I think you either grow up around people that are in it, or you just kind of, you might be creative inherently, and you're like, well, how can I use these skill sets to make a living?
100%.
It's like we were talking about Peter Nicholson earlier, the former CCO of Periscope, and was at Hill Holly for a while, and he had a quote that said, creativity is not something people with an MBA are taught. He said that's just something you have instinctually. It's so much inherently a part of who you are, and when it hits like that, you know it. You know you're almost compelled to go and do that, which makes this a unique industry. Raul, I'm sure you probably have a story around something like that too. I mean, like, how did you get into the biz?
Yeah, very weird because all my family's military, and my dad's military police officer, my brother's police officer, my other brother's military, and I do videography.
Yeah, but you do a lot more than that.
I do a lot more, but I mean, it's just funny. I definitely had to pave my own.
Now you put music
path
to it too, like Bad Boys.
Yeah, there you go.
What you gonna do? It's kind of the same for me. I mean, but my mom's in the biz too. Like I said, so my mom's in the biz, but I watched her get up and put on that pantsuit. She's a media director now. Has been in the agency world for like 30 years. A great buyer, really great mind. And I just watched her get up and do it every day. And I was like, well, that might make for a cool industry. It was either
That's pretty cool.
Either this or going into film. And this is a little bit easier than making it in Hollywood. So I was like, well, not that I'm averse to that, but
good choice too.
I think a lot of people have learned to suppress their creativity, and myself included, in that you hear about starving artists, and it's not something you can make a living at. I think that was eye-opening when I saw that video about people actually making a living doing that, doing something creative that sells. I think I've even dissuaded my daughter is very creative, and she's now in oil and gas. But because I'm like, you can do that as a hobby, or you can, go basically give her options, and she chose the smart option. Maybe, I don't know, but I think that Peter's comments are true. I think that, but I think everyone has some form of creativity. I think a lot of people suppress it because our business is on the creative side is really hard to get into. Coming out of college, it was very difficult to break into creative advertising. You have a really good portfolio. You can go off to the portfolio schools and spend a couple years and do that. And I chose to stay with my wife and new baby and not do that. But I think that, you think about the best business leaders out there, they're all creative problem solvers. And I think creativity on its own is, just creative, and I think our business is being creative to sell something that's worthy of selling. And if it's not worthy of selling, don't sell it. But I think that, like I said, the greatest business leaders are out there are very creative people. They find new ways to make new markets, create new businesses, create things that, and I'm a believer, so I think that that's why he's called the ultimate creator. He created everything. So I think it's inherent in what we do. It's just how do we nurture that? How do we push it forward or not? Sometimes that's a tough choice. I know I have some friends that went down the creative path and some that were super creative. Some of the most creative people I know that chose to be artists, some successful, some not, and some that said, screw it, I'm just going to go do business.
It's so funny that you mentioned that. It's actually a really great segue too. I always felt like, because like you said, artists are multifaceted. Like Raul, we talk about cooking a lot, that being another creative outlet for you and kind of some of the stuff that you do.
Sure.
You just build an awesome pizza oven in your backyard, which is really dope. I think that for me too,
that'll be for like another podcast. So
yeah, we're definitely make pieces. I think that also like that, having those outlets, when I kind of thought about, I played basketball most of my life. Jay, you're a football guy, you're an athlete, so you kind of, we've talked about this a lot. I never wanted to load something that I loved so much. so creativity, you can flex different muscles doing different things. So I think that sometimes you want to keep things that are passions. And a lot of the reason we have a lot of people in our business that end up becoming jaded because they end up making a living doing what they love most. I'm not saying that's always the case. I think with some people, they choose to go other paths because they're like, hey, I'm so passionate and love this so much that if I have to lean on it as my means for living and like paying my bills and my rent and all that, I'll probably get burnt out and I may not love it as much. I think people are afraid of losing that. And so they go a different path, something they could be good at, right? But I don't know. It's a hard balance to strike because I was telling you about this. Like, I love what we do. And I think that, I know you have a lot of thoughts around this too, is that we get in these spaces where you try to balance, man, I really love coming in every day and getting to do what we do. Yeah, it's just challenges like anything else. The business is just, any kind of business is that way. But it beats a hell of a lot of other things.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about roofing in the middle of July in Texas. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Stuff like
and
that.
brush
You know
out
what I
of
mean?
an endless fence. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so it's nice to be able to kind of have that balance, and not everybody has that. And I think that's lost on us sometimes, man. Do you ever feel that way? Like people like, I know I have friends who still work like call center jobs or working or like accountants or
I mean, I
corporate
think
places.
I think it's cool because even like what we're doing now, we're doing a podcast.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who are really creative and they're probably better than I am, but they want to do it on their own terms.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, I get blown away being able to getting paid to, do podcasts and things like that for a lot of our clients and then pay my mortgage with it.
Yeah.
But, some people don't get the same satisfaction. They want to do podcasting for what they like their big idea. And
that was a nice sell, by the way.
Yeah, right.
Indirect.
I think
Shameless plug.
It comes down to what you said, the word hate is fear. I think when you're a little kid drawing things and everybody's like, oh, you're great at drawing that. You should do that for a living. And I think the fear of, well, is that a real thing? Can you really make money doing that? And then pushing that forward to being fearless to present ideas and ones that, like I said, that move the needle, that actually at the end of the day get sales, and not just sales for sales sake, sales that build brands, things that make an impact. Those ideas don't come from being fearful. So you have to drop that fear behind, I think. So I guess what I'm saying is you got to be fearless when you're being creative. And whether that's, on your own where you're sitting there drawing, I have a need or I want to finish this project out. I know what it should be and what it should look like. But then you're going to have people that come in and your drunk uncle is going to be like, that looks like shit. Well, you're drunk uncle, so I don't really care what you think, And then, not that clients are drunk uncles, but sometimes you have, various people in the mix. Sometimes you not necessarily take a stand, but a lot of times you just got to push forward, go around the stone in the water. I say that a lot about life in general, but know that you've been given this talent and the ability to see where it should be and where it should end up, and not being fearful that you shouldn't be the one that takes it there. Right.
I think that's there is a certain fearlessness, and also because the other thing we talked about a lot is, and this is actually a really good segue into the next segment, we're going to talk about creating brand voices. But I think that's why people come to people like us. I think, and this is not like tooting our own horn or anything, but I mean just creatives in general, right? Because there's a certain vulnerability that you have to put yourself out on Front Street and open yourself up for critiques, even from people that may not be so utterly creative or even in the same realm as you in terms of the way you think about things. Because a lot of people, we think about inherently we're creative, so we might put our lens on other people and say, well, everybody should be able to think that way. Mm-hmm. But that's what makes selling in the ideas challenging sometimes, because not everybody thinks that way, right? They can have a totally different mindset. Yeah. May not be able to make the leap.
Just make it pop.
Yeah.
It's like,
oh God, make the logo bigger.
Well, the talent that comes with being creative too. If you're firing on all cylinders, you've taken a lot of data and insight into the equation, and not to make it formulaic, but you have a lot of tools at your disposal. You have a lot of, I guess, paint on the canvas, and you have the ability to take a step back and see the bigger picture. Sometimes that clients are so close to it, and if you're too myopic with it, you can't take that step back. And so that's why I think people like working with folks like us, like Peter and yourself and Raul, is that, I'm coming to these folks because they may have an answer that I haven't thought about, or a creative angle that it's not just throwing money at it. It's something that, well, this didn't cost you anything. Yeah. And now you've got sales that are through the roof, So some of the early days of clients that we worked on in my previous life, you have no budget. And sometimes, you all the way back in the film industry and different things, different case studies out there. Sometimes when you're focused with not having money, you come up with the most creative solutions that end up being bigger than the results are bigger than what they would have been if you had all the money in the world. I
think it's funny to take kind of a collegiate approach that way, because I remember studying film in school. Go Frogs. You're a tech guy, though. Guns up. Cousins.
It's just that you have the broken version of
come on, man. What? So are you calling me broken?
No.
I mean, I am, but so I think we're all broken in here. It's a whole other conversation. But I think that, it's funny that you say that. I think that people, you take that collegiate approach, like where you're faced with limitations. But inside those limitations, it kind of acts as guardrails, right? For you to be able to have something to ride on, to sort of give you direction, right? And tell you like what the path ahead looks like. So with that kind of an approach, that kind of fearlessness, having some limitations of shoestring budgets or clients that are people, not necessarily clients, not all clients are this way. Some people are this way. They just want things one way. No matter how much data you show them, no matter how much rationale you bring to the table, they just want it to be one way. And that's okay. And oftentimes the tough position of being on the agency side is that we want to do what we can to do the best we can for everyone that we work with. And sometimes that may mean brushing our ego off. A lot of it's brushing our ego off and saying, hey, we want to collaborate on this to make sure it's the right thing. So what kind of how do you approach creating, if you have to stand out in a crowded marketplace, man, where everybody has every avenue there is to put their stuff out into the world, not only brands, but independent brands and people. We've seen more independent stores and retail brands pop up over the last year. The whole shop small movement is here. And people are railing against these bigger places. We've seen that recently with all the DI stuff with Target and all that, but that's a whole other conversation. But how do you approach creating distinct brand voices in a crowded, oversaturated marketplace? I mean, how do you get in front of trying to grab people's attention?
I think that's what you said is the key is what's the crowded marketplace. So that's who you should consider. That's who we're speaking on behalf of on our side of the fence, from creative, from agency, from PR, from digital, whatever. Just knowing that you're not the only brand in town, So they have a lot of more so than ever. You have so many choices, so many options out there. What is that crowded marketplace, and what are potential ways that you could attract, whether it be a fire, a fire hose or a spigot or a garden hose, but how can you target a group of people that will resonate with your brand? That's are going to be your loyal customers, but also are going to be champions of your brand. Mm-hmm. So it's really, I think it is that the ability to step back and not be so focused on the brand or yourself, and losing the ego for sure. But taking a step back first and saying, what's the marketplace look like? And how do I fit in that or not? If I don't fit in that, do I need to pivot? Do I need to shift the business? Or is it solved through a creative execution or media tactics or what have you? But I think it's being respectful of the audience and whatever you're trying to sell.
Yeah.
First, and then a brand voice. Then you actually just got to have a voice, right? You can't It's got to be a singular voice, something that's consistent across all media, something that resonates with the audience, something that that talks to them like normal people.
Yeah.
That's someone they like, that or I want to be known as someone that carries that Dos Equis bottle. There's a lot of interesting case studies around that, but make yourself relevant, to the audience.
We talked a lot about Raul and I were talking, and we've talked a lot about this, Jay. That people now are more apt to follow people than they are big polished brands. Yeah. People just want connection, right? In a world where we're connected but more disconnected, that's the funny thing, is like the more connected we become, digitally, right, the more disconnected we become from community and people in person, right? It's like you see a group of people sitting around a table at lunch, 20-somethings, Gen Z, and they're alone together because they're all on their phones, not saying a word to anybody. They could be texting each other across the table. Who knows? That's why it's always cool to be able to try to create a persona. Somebody that does it really well is Wendy's. We talk about Wendy's a lot. They've got that snarky kind of smart-assy kind of attitude, and they've kept it for years now. When they were in their little scuffle with Burger King, where that was a few years back when the whole chicken sandwich debacle was happening, I think that there's something to be said for pulling the curtain back and allowing people to see you for real, like, or at least creating the perception of it being for real, right? But so with that said, and in the world that we live in now, which is heavily driven by social connection, right? The Instagrams, TikToks, and YouTubes of the world. And Raul, I know you have a lot of thoughts around this, so I'm definitely going to want you to chime in.
For sure.
How has branding changed over time? What do you think the core principles have been that have stuck around? Have they all stuck around? And what's remained the same and what's evolved past what it used to be? I mean, everything has an evolution, right, for the most part. But how much of it is kind of sticking to the same general ideas, and how much of it is a complete landscape shift?
I think now it's a two-way street. I think before we had the ability back, 20, 30 years, all the way back to the Mad Men days of kind of force-feeding our message on the public, and now the public's a part of that message. I think maybe a list of questions I saw here, but it's like, what's the worst thing you can do as a brand is nothing, not have a voice. So either you're going to be a part of the conversation or not. And if you're not, people will make your brand for you. So I think it's not a warning, but it's the truth. There's a lot of brand advocates out there. There's also a lot of people that want to shit on brands. So I think, to your point earlier, Wendy's, whoever's running their social right now on their platforms is having fun. They're engaging conversation. They're doing fun tweets, things that at the end, after you read a tweet, you're like, I kind of want to have a Wendy's. That's fun. That's a fun brand. It's like, I saw one about Bezos launching his wife and some ladies into space, and I think Wendy's tweeted, "Can we send them back?"
That was Katy Perry.
Or I kissed the ground and I liked it. It's just, it was fun.
Right.
So it's like they're doing a great job of staying relevant in the conversation, current conversations that are super timely. In that regard, you gotta have some control, but you gotta know that you're not in control 100% like you used to be. So you gotta get in the mix and in the mosh pit, and be willing to take a slug and give a slug, right? So
I think being a part of the conversation is a big piece, right? Like that's some hellified social listening that they're doing to be able to stay on top of things like that. I mean, whoever's on it, kudos to you guys at Wendy's,
they're
man, 'cause y'all are
empowered,
killing it,
and they're empowered. They're not just out there doing it on their own accord. It's someone at leadership has said, we want to be relevant. We want to be out there. And hey, that was a fun tweet you did. And I got a lot of buzz.
And the crazy thing is like they're, because Wendy's almost has to be, man, because they're like third, fourth tier. They're not the first. When you think about burger fast food spots, they're not the first
They're not, yeah.
folks you think about. And there's a lot more options that pop up
in that
every
regards,
day.
you got to be fearless because what do you got to lose?
I know.
Right?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about it too. It's like they're taking really big risks. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are very scared to take risks
Yeah.
with
Today's
their
world, they
brand.
are. And,
Yeah.
But then what hasn't changed, people are not, people still champion risk takers.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Whether you're going to war in WW2 or
Yeah.
now you're waiting for Wendy's. I hate to draw those corollaries, but yeah.
That's a
big
big
leap,
comparison.
But it's like people, they want that those are cool. They've got,
Yeah.
whatever.
But, the
whatever
amount
you
of
wanna call it.
the amount of people that you would pitch that to, and they wouldn't go for it. You know what I mean? It's-
or you have a lot of, and there's some fun videos in our world of, I don't know if whoever's watching this would want to see it, but Van Gogh painting his painting, and then in comes the account folks.
We love our
or the-
account service
or
folks.
the,
by the way.
re-
You just
or
preface
the
it.
statisticians, and they're like, well, we think it'd be better if
Did you do a vertical
it was
format?
vertical, and it would look better if this, and
Yeah.
and then all the way back to Apple. The Apple's the case study of someone at Microsoft put together of if we designed, the iPhone, this was what it would look like.
Yeah.
It'd be chock full of bullshit
Yeah.
all over the packaging, and it wouldn't be simple and short.
Yeah.
And classic and timeless and sleek and cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's, the other thing is, I think that if things don't scare you, you're not pushing far enough. If things don't scare you, you're not pushing far enough. And I would almost rather push too far and be told to draw it back a little bit than to not push far enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to take risks. They're calculated, obviously.
Sure.
And in our business, we do a lot of diligence up front to make sure that the risks are not so much so that it would be anything to be detrimental to a brand,
Mm-hmm.
but it could also be the greatest thing the brand ever did, right?
Well,
And you
if-
have to know how to make that distinction.
And, because I don't like to throw out creative for creative sake, but if you're looking at just numbers and cents, if you look at South Park, so South Park, they push the envelope on all their concept scripts, all their, everything that they do. Those guys push the envelope because they know the censors are going to pull them back.
Right.
But that's 10 plus years ago. Now they sold for $300 million to Comedy Central, I think, or whoever it was. So, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
the money wins out, and they were able to do that not because they were policing themselves, but because they were willing to push the boundaries.
Yeah, we always at the outset of any brand building, we always do, just to let everybody in a little bit on our process, we always do a brand spectrum, basically. It's not a new idea, but it helps people stay out of what we like to call Blandville, a term coined by one of my old associates, Cameron Gawley, really great dude, smart guy, founder of Buzz Shift with Eddie Badrina, told me, you got to get people to lean one way or the other. And it's always the risk takers that people remember. It's not the ones that live in the middle and never lean one way. You got to take some chances.
I had a buddy in high school. Man, he never took risks.
Yeah.
I forget his name.
I mean, you could live it. You could live.
Go on.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
This is what we deal with all day, every day. This guy. Okay, so
That guy never took any
so
risks.
that's actually a great. I don't know if you read these questions ahead of time, didn't you? Because this is actually a really good segue into the next part of this. So let's talk about some of the biggest branding, but let's open up a little bit. Let's talk about some of the biggest branding mistakes you see businesses make and how can they avoid them? I think we're kind of talking about this in a roundabout way anyway, but if you have specific ideas or something you've seen recently, something you've seen from the past, something that just made you go, oh my God, what in God's name are they? I know you're going to have to think a little bit. So if we have to come back to it, we can.
No, it's there's so many, and I don't like to throw poo-poo.
We can poke the bear.
Unless I'm in the cage at the zoo, but it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm not always right, but if you look at, you got to admire whoever's doing the Jaguar stuff now, but then you also got to realize you guys are full of shit. Like, there's no way in hell because you're known for a car now that breaks down all the time. But now you're going to wrap it up in this. Maybe it's a car. I don't know what it is, but to that point, maybe they're just trying to get buzz and they're trying to stay relevant.
Lipstick meat pig kind of.
So I wouldn't. Verdict's out on that. Maybe Raul has a Jaguar.
I think a lot of people.
Wait, why me?
No, he's a Dodge guy. He drives.
I'm a Dodge.
He's rolling around like Blade. Yeah, man. Yeah, I would. I think I might have pointed that one out too.
Yeah. Did you guys see the Nutter Butter, like their last huge kind of campaign? It was kind of crazy. I woke up one morning and I was on TikTok and there was like, oh my God, a lot of like micro influencers like, oh my God, did you see what Nutter Butter did on their page or something like that? Yeah. And you go to their social and it's like this crazy, insane video. It's like somebody was on acid, like making
well, I think
making this video.
Again, if you read the numbers on that and trying to stay relevant in a Skittles world or, in that demo's mindset on the shelves in a Quickie Mart, what are you going to pick? Would you pick a Nutter Butter before this? Now you may.
Now you might, yeah.
Now you're like, try Nutter Butter and do goofy videos. Or, some reason that teens would want to have a Nutter Butter. I would argue that why wouldn't you try it?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just go, let's it's a candy little nut.
Yeah.
So get nuts with it, right? So I don't know. I like stuff like that because especially when it does, the proof's in the pudding when your sales go up. I think one of the biggest mistakes, you made me think about Dos Equis earlier, just how hard it was, the story of the process of going through to get to the most interesting man in the world. And I like to talk about this story. I don't talk a bunch, but it came from a brand strategist that she was young, 20-something, and all the research and focus groups and yada, yada. At the end of the day, it's at a bar where guys in their 20s just want to be seen as interesting. And so she brought the brief back and say, guys this age want to be seen as interesting people. And the creators were like, oh, yeah, thanks. Thanks for the creator brief. That's ridiculous. Okay, we're going to make the most interesting man in the world. And so then they made this character, and it made it all the way to the brand summit for Heineken. And right until the moment of the presentation to the audience, and this is what we're going to do, the CEO was advised, we're not doing this. This is not something we believe in. She's full of shit. These creative guys are full of shit. We're not doing it. He's like, no, I like it. We need to do something. Otherwise, we're just going to be Blandville, right? We're just going to be Dos Equis and see where it takes us. And they did the most interesting man in the world. 33% increase in sales day one, basically, and then carried that through for a long time. And then a new brand management team, a new CEO came in. Like, well, let's modernize it. Let's make him young and relatable. Let's make him 25. Well, that's not the point. The point was he's lived this crazy life. He's lived this life that no one else has lived ever. He's James Bond meets Ricardo Montalban or whoever.
Con.
Insert Hispanic name here.
Stop. And that guy's Jewish, interestingly enough. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, and it was a drastic failure, and they were like, I'm sure everyone
it's politically incorrect.
At Dos Equis and Heineken were like, why can't we go back to the cool dude, the most interesting man in the world? Now it's this young guy. Anyway, so then they scrapped it, and it's like, that's a mistake. That's another mistake, I think. It's like, if you're making hay, don't get up.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's kind of a, I'll tell you, we talk about this a lot, and this is, we're going to pull back, we're going to get into it. We're going to pull the curtain back on this a bit. That is an epidemic in our business. People that want a part of it and will stick their nose in it, even if it's, everybody's like, man, that's an awesome idea. Somebody's going to go, well, and it just really throws everybody for a loop, and it's like, hey, can we just run with this? Like, just trust the instinct. And if people's knee-jerk reaction is, man, this is amazing, then why not just roll with it, man? Look at what happened.
I say it all the time. If you're a successful business, you do not need advertising and marketing. If your line's out the door every day, you're a Mi Casina, you don't need advertising. I have a restaurant. We do work with restaurant clients across the country, and if they come to us because they don't have lines out the door. But I've told restaurateurs, they're like, oh, we think we need to do this or that or this. I'm like, you're packed.
Yeah.
Every meal, you're packed. Why would you spend money on marketing and advertising? And then the other thing I think to caveat with that is that you only spend marketing and advertising dollars when it gets a return on the investment. If I'm a business owner, which I have been in the past, you're only going to spend money if it gets you that plus. Mm-hmm. So don't do it. If you can't see not a light at the end of the tunnel, or if you can't see just a light in general, you're going to be making X times, or you're going to be able to open more restaurants, or you're going to be able to expand your market.
Yeah.
Then don't invest in it because it's wasted money.
Yeah.
Plus, social media is free.
That's true. Well, guys,
you can do a lot.
Y'all going to put us out of business.
I know, right?
I'm just playing. No, because at the end of the day, you still got to have somebody to do all this stuff, and we're pretty well equipped to do it. So, okay, we talked a little bit about just in short. Is there like an ad out there that you would consider like a guilty pleasure of all the stuff you've seen? Because I know you do a lot of research. You're a research guy. You do a lot of diligence. We all kind of are by default, I guess. What's like an ad that you see right now? Because I can tell you what mine is. That Astapro commercial. You guys seen that Astapro? It's faster, bro. And like the kid tells his mom, it's like a nasal spray or something. The kid tells his mom, "Try Astapro. It's faster, bro." And she's like, "I'm not sure, bro." But it's the rhyming thing is so corny. But every time I see it, I'm like, hey, this is fun, right? You're going to smile at it. You're like, it kind of annoys me, but it's kind of fun. That would be mine. What's one that you?
That's your guilty pleasure.
That's my guilty pleasure ad.
Right.
Yeah, it's corny, I know, but
no.
I'm a seasonal allergy sufferer, so I'm like, yeah, I want to get Astapro. I'm going to ask my doctor for it. Yeah. Ask your doctor about Astapro, right? And I'll be like, it's faster, bro.
Okay, all right. Well, that wasn't mine.
Well, I would hope not. I hope everybody has different ones.
No, gee whiz.
I think it's Astapro.
I just said gee whiz too.
Hey, Raul,
anyway.
Look up Astapro.
No, I know, right?
I don't know. I'm still. My graduate school advertising is Chip, which is a good friend of ours.
Chip Van Pelt,
older gentleman that's went through kind of the late days of the Mad Men days, but he had a shelf of communication arts annuals, and I would religiously go through all the decades and kind of study, religiously study what they'd done in the past. And you see recurring trends. But what was the question? Anyway, so I have a lot of old school stuff. We were talking about Bugs Bunny earlier, but
guilty pleasure ad.
Yeah. So there's I don't want to just throw out the Apples of the world, because I think that not everything, but a lot of what they do is just brilliant. Because it's so simple, and it's
because he threw a boatload of money at it.
I know. I'm kind of an Apple fanboy myself.
Me too. I won't throw it out there, but I did anyway. But I think back in and not to go back to beer ads, but if you look at the High Life ads back in the day, those are
fantastic.
Top five for me. Of Errol Morris directed these spots that were the High Life man and what that person is, and it's not the Michelob drinker guy.
Yeah.
And you should be cool with that. You should be cool with going to Walmart and grabbing a 6-pack of the champagne of beers.
I love High Life.
The champagne of beers says it all, right? So all these ads were great, and they had a guy eating
good deviled eggs.
Those were awesome. Eggs. They had powdered donuts that the oil on from the dust from the mechanic's hands was a protective barrier. The voice for the brand was perfect. The cinematography was perfect, and the sales
reflected it.
That,
yeah.
Sure.
What about you, Raul? What was your favorite guilty ad? Do you have the guilty pleasure ad? Do you have one?
Oh, I totally think it's just going back to Apple.
Yeah.
Because people kind of hate on you for being a fanboy or a fangirl, and I'm just like, yeah, sorry, but
you can't.
I would
Listen,
really
they're the best
hate on
at
you if you're a Microsoft boy.
they're the best at what they do. It's like, why? How can you hate on that? It's
Yeah, but
like they make the
actually
Love
get
Windows.
I actually get a little giddy though. Like,
No, me too. I'm a nerd. I'm totally a nerd like that. No, I'm a geek. So,
Excel's the best.
That's actually, so while we're talking about like crazy, because a lot of those are products of crazy ideas, man. Like people that take risks, weird ideas. Like I always tell, like when you sit around, oftentimes like when you're sitting around, you had a couple, you have a couple old fashions, whatever, and you sit around, it's late at night, you're bouncing ideas off the wall. That's when the best shit comes to the forefront, man. And the next day you're like, we need to do that.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
At the end of the day, too, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's super simple. I like to dumb things down because it's easy for me. But if someone will wear your T-shirt, a logo on your T-shirt, or put the Nike logo on a truck, or that's the bar. If you don't, to my point, you don't see anyone wearing an Excel T-shirt.
yeah,
You see them wearing Apple shirts. You see them wearing
I'd probably look at them weird if they
brands
were.
that they have an affinity with, that they want to be seen wearing. I think that's the gold standard, So we had a logo presentation yesterday. At the end of the day, you want that logo, this aviation company, to be something that people are proud of when they're landing in Love Field.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's my maintenance company. That's my aviation company down there. So I think it's something that you're proud to wear. And if we can reach that standard of a T-shirt, if you can build a brand that people want to wear,
Advocacy.
Yeah.
That's what drives it.
it seems simple, but it's like, think about it. Your T-shirt drawer, if you go to pick up a T-shirt, I don't want to wear a lot of T-shirts. I will wear different stuff, and I think there's some brands like this one that I'm wearing now that have done a good job of just kind of through grassroots marketing.
Macho.
Anyway,
It's great
But-
shirts, man.
yeah,
You got the little glasses holder.
yeah.
Awesome.
It's done a good job. Short, sweet name and everything.
So, so with that said, so we come up with great ideas. We're kind of jumping around here, but I want to ask you this because it's a really nice transition into this piece. In a world where everything's everything's always been measurable, but in a world where everything's more measurable than it ever has been, and a lot of what you're seeing with the numbers drives a creative decision making. Me personally, I think the creative intuition still plays into, you have to go with that's going to teach you how to target better, but your brand voice and your messaging really shouldn't deviate that much from the standard that you set. You still have to be that. Just maybe you use it and you harness it in different ways for different audiences. How do you balance the numbers game part of it, the data, the analytics, what that's showing you versus how that informs you in making creative decisions? Like, how do you find the balance between the two, not leaning one way or the other too much, but enough to still be impactful? That's a loaded question.
It is. But I think, everything we do should be actionable and measured by data. The company says I have to say that. But anyway, no. But it's true. And I think you got to have confidence if you're confident, super confident that you have the right brand voice and the right brand that you're building, you kind of got to let a lot of that shit fall off the wayside, so you can set countless focus groups where, it's kind of the 12 Angry Men approach to, well, I don't like it because they said that I shouldn't like it, or, so I don't trust a lot of those type of environments. I do trust at the end of the day, though, if you run different campaigns and your website traffic immediately goes up just because you said we're doing low fixed rates. Well, shit, that's resonating, and it's something straightforward, not convoluted, and something that's easy to understand. And then at the end of the day, if that's what you stand for as a brand, something that's easy to understand, and it's an easy, smart switch. It was the case for Sarah Energy back in the day. It was because we had a lot of data, a lot of this and that, and these users say this, or the focus groups say that, or polls, whatever you think of polls. But at the end of the day, if you're confident, smart, and you're confident in your smart leaders, then let's go. You got to commit. You can't just wait around on the data and second guess everything.
Yeah.
So, if you've done all the data gathering, you've done all the research you can with the budget that you have, and you're expeditiously and I guess being purposeful and targeted with how you're placing your media, because media is a big part of. I don't see creative and media being separate. I think,
of course, yeah.
Some of the most creative things in the world have come from media planners and brand strategists, and just people walking by with a mop.
Good ideas can come from anywhere, man.
But it's you just have to be confident and move forward. And a lot of times, being the first to market is huge. So. And the first to market with the message. A lot of times you're in the same market, but you're the first one that says, we're not doing all this other shit, we're doing this.
Yeah.
And people resonate with that.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I kind of look at it as, to that end, it's like the Apple, the Vision Pro stuff, where they came out with that marketing, that big keynote commercial that was like 10 minutes long, showing what it could do. And they were the first ones to kind of do that to that extent.
Yeah.
And it may not have paid off the way they would have hoped, because the Vision Pro was a bust, probably because people weren't half ready for it, and there wasn't enough ready for it.
Yeah.
But they took the chance, right? They said, hey, we're at least going to push this out there. And because usually if there's like, especially with big tech, there's going to be adopters, and anybody knows that it's always going to be one of the big three that pushes it out of the market. It's either going to be Apple, Google, or Meta. One of the three, right?
That's the thing.
Look at the metaverse is kind of like, it's not really taking hold either.
Yeah.
Not at least the way they thought.
But no one, I would argue that no one respects Apple or Meta less for having taken the charge.
No.
And going out there, because all the tweets and all the this is a failure and whatever. Is it going to be in 5-10 years? Is it going to be we're on the hyper connected Ray-Bans and we're doing what we're talking about? Then we're going to be looking back on these LinkedIn videos of not Steve Jobs, but someone else that said, this is what's going to be.
Yeah.
And we hit it too early. We didn't have the bandwidth. We didn't have it. Yeah. But
see, to me, it's a handful of seeds that you're just throwing into fertile ground.
Right.
It's like, this to me was a long play.
I think that they know that too.
I
think they know that the average person isn't going to fork over $4,000 for this.
Right.
And wear this huge headset. I think they know that they're just pushing boundaries, and that eventually it'll catch up.
Yeah, I thought it was great product placement. I was watching the new Black Mirror the other night, and it was hilarious because the girlfriend comes in and is talking to the boyfriend, and he turns and he looks at her, and he's got the fake face.
Oh God, that is.
And he's like, it was funny though, but he's like, yeah, but you're wrong. And then he turns back and he's like doing his thing. And I was like, that's hilarious.
That is hilarious.
For all you Black Mirror watchers, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
So I don't watch it.
That she rules the universe is the spoiler.
Well, there you go. So that begs the next question. Like, when you start to talk about ideas and the way that you kind of get them out to people and help them understand, what's the weirdest idea you've ever pitched to a client that you can think of? And here's the second part of that question. Did you pitch it because you were trying to sell in a less weird idea that you really wanted them to go for? Or is this something you were really trying to see if they were willing to go for it? Because we're always in the mindset, hey, let's take the three. We come up with a ton of ideas. Ideas are a dime a dozen. But let's take the three best ones that we really feel like. And usually it's tiered. Here's the really safe one. Here's the one that pushes it a little further. And here's the one that's like way out there, right? That they'll probably never go for. Some people will. But usually you do that one to make them take the one that's in the middle, which is the one you really want them to do. But sometimes you get the people that are like, oh shit, the third idea is kind of crazy and we like it. Let's do that.
Yeah.
What's the weirdest thing you've ever pitched to somebody, and what was the purpose behind it?
So I think my answer is yes and yes, because there was two questions in there, but I think that you always want to push the envelope and you want to see how far you can go with it, because at the end of the day, I feel like when you are charging that hill, you're up the hill further than someone else, and fail or win. And this sounds weird to apply this to a Verizon radio commercial, but I just remember this is just a funny story, because I was presenting all these commercials and had leprechauns in one, which are great in radio, by the way, especially if they're tall leprechauns. And they picked that one, they ran that. And anyway,
It's kind of an oxymoron.
yeah, it was. He was big bones. That was the point. Anyway, but he had a pot of gold, but then pitching a mime on a job interview in radio was was funny as hell, because it's like he never said anything. So, and then the interviewer was
Which on
left,
radio would seem like a
yeah.
would seem
So
like a
he
death
was
sentence,
left to like fill in the blanks. He's like, "Oh, so you're a man of few words. I see you like this makeup, and oh, you're in a box? What? You're feeling boxed in at work, And it was just preposterous. But if you took the time to listen to it,
Yeah.
if we did produce it, which we didn't, but that was a fun presentation, and client had a laugh. We ended up picking some fun stuff that won some awards, but that was
Again,
that was an interesting one.
Taking chances, right?
Yeah.
Taking chances.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, dude, this has been incredible. Man, thank you for coming on. Firstly, this has been incredible.
Yeah.
The one thing that I would ask you, and I think I could probably answer this for us, is to say, if a business owner is listening to this podcast or watching it or whatever, and they want to refine their brand today to try to stand out in the space, what's one actionable step that they can do right now that would help them do that? I would say reach out to Point, because we can help you with that part. But what's something practical that you could give them right now to help them grow their brand or refine their brand for the today's market?
Well, I would argue to want to know what the brand is, and in relation to your competition, and what your audience feels about that brand. So again, what is the not general population, but what does your target audience think about your brand, or do they think about you at all? So then, in my argument, if they don't think about you at all, you don't really have a brand. So you have a lot of potential. You have the ability to build and refine a brand, be it small or large. But I would say, I think you said this to a potential now client the other day, is like partner with someone that asks the right questions. A team that really wants to understand your business, number one, what moves the needle, what's success to you, and how can your brand not only help that, bolster that, but be something that everyone can champion, and that not only your internal audiences wear the T-shirt, but to where external audiences not only buy your product or service, but then they wear your T-shirt as well.
They advocate for you.
Yeah,
Yeah, because that kind of loyalty, you can't buy that when people are spreading the word for you. That's free PR.
And there's no silver bullet. It's a lot of different things. It's a multifaceted approach across
Testing.
all media. I say media, social, traditional, and being objective with what you want. Being open to what media is these days. It's not just social media, and it's not just traditional media. And it's everything, that every screen that your message, your product or service comes across, and how you reach those people that see that screen.
Folks, you heard it here first. You can't say much more eloquently than that. Jay, thanks for coming on, man. We really appreciate it, brother. Thank you, sir. Thanks for sitting in. This is awesome. We're going to do this again soon.
Enjoyed it. No,
And and that's Ep 1.
That's it.
Catch y'all on the flip side, man.
thanks, guys.